I think the single most important issue is one that I thought Theo Usherwood had assuaged my concerns about, but actually he hasn't. It is a very live and troubling issue, specifically the very low number of care home staff that seem to have taken up the opportunity for being vaccinated, coupled with the continuing hesitancy among people from ethnic minorities compared to people not from ethnic minorities, and added then to the sort of third leg of this particular stool involves one big chain of care homes confirming that they won't take on any new staff unless they have been vaccinated, which is a story I've managed to mislay. I don't think you're legally allowed to stop the workforce from coming back to work if they haven't been vaccinated. I need to double check that. Here it is. No, still missing. It'll turn up. Don't worry. I don't. But if you haven't been vaccinated, I think I'm allowed not to hire you. So if you are applying for a new job and you haven't been vaccinated, I can say, sorry, you're not on the list. You're not coming in. But I don't think if you are doing your old job and you are not vaccinated, I don't think I can send you home. All of which is a bit by the by, because the conversation I want to have is a little broader. If you can tell me why you think the take-up rate in care homes is so low, straight to the front of the queue. 03456060973. And as Theo reminded us earlier, this is a cohort of the population that is entitled to an early vaccine. So my slightly desperate hope that it would simply be evidence of the queue being long was obviously stupid, actually. I can't believe I said that out loud, let alone in the company of the great sage that is Theo Usherwood. Of course it's big news, and of course the shadow social care minister Liz Kendall is right to draw attention to it. The government, she says, urgently needs a strategy to increase uptake among frontline care workers. You know what we do on this programme when we're presented with a problem. We don't ask what is the problem, because we already know what the problem is. We don't ask what you think about the problem if you have no particular insights or intelligence on the issue. We simply ask why the problem exists. So we'll start with the why of it. Why is the take-up rate for vaccines among care home staff apparently so low? 03456060973. And that will inevitably lead us into the hesitancy among ethnic minorities, because there's a disproportionate number of people from ethnic minorities working in care homes. In fact, there's a disproportionate number of people from ethnic minorities in almost every job that is low paid, undervalued and under-respected. Such is the nature of our society. So why? It's the same question. Why is hesitancy so prevalent among ethnic minorities? Is, I think, unless you're going to correct me on this, and as ever, you're more than welcome to do so. In fact, you are actively encouraged to do so. It's the same question, isn't it, as why hesitancy remains so prevalent among ethnic minorities, black and minority ethnic communities, or people, actually. We don't need to say communities. People. Here are the latest numbers. This is university staff in Leicester NHS Trust specifically. Wow. When's that from? Is that really recent? That's really bad and actually quite frightening. I don't do unnecessary alarm, and that's why I'm double checking on the timing, but so 70.9% of white staff at the university hospitals of Leicester NHS Trust have received the jab. There'll be some variables and there'll be some wriggles and wrinkles here that we don't know or understand, but the big picture is as follows. Just under 71% of white staff have had their first vaccine. They've had the jab. When you transfer your attention to South Asian staff, that figure goes down to 58.5%. And when you transfer further to black staff, that figure goes down to 36.8%. Now, I don't know, and I don't know how we would ever find out what sort of regard the Queen is held in black and South Asian families and people. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I imagine that there is quite a large reservoir of respect and affection for her. And that may be, because you know how my mind works by now. I saw the Queen making her rather lovely contribution to this conversation earlier, calling upon people to get vaccinated and indeed to remember that it is thinking of others that should prompt you to get vaccinated. And I'm afraid I did what I always do on the programme. I went for the why of it, not the what of it. Well, I don't really care what your opinion is of the Queen getting involved, but I'd love to know why the Queen has decided to get involved. And it seems almost impossible to me that she's done so randomly. Or she woke up one day last week and thought, hey, I'd love to get involved in this sort of thing. I presume there's a reason for it. And at the moment, the only reason I can think of is this, is that actually she's appealing to all of us to get the vaccine, but that her message is particularly directed at people more likely not to get it. And at the moment, that would mean, in the context of these figures, people from ethnic minorities. And in the context of the Leicester figures, which have really disturbed me is the word I would use, actually, because the whole point about vaccine rollouts, this is why people that used to insist on, complain about the NHS spending money on translations are in retrospect so dangerous, is it works better according to how many people get it. You don't need me to explain this to you, but herd immunity is achieved when a massive percentage of the population have been vaccinated. So you not getting vaccinated is not simply your problem, it's my problem too. And that, I think, is probably why the Queen has weighed in this morning. Goodness knows she's got a lot on her mind. Her husband's still in hospital. Her grandson is drawing rather a lot of lovely headlines in America, but still coming under regular attack from nasty people in this country. She's got a lot going on. I think there's a new grandchild just arrived, isn't there, as well? Didn't one of Prince Andrew's daughters just have a baby? I could be wrong. But anyway, the Queen wouldn't ordinarily weigh in on something like this unless there was a very good reason to do so. And the only reason I can currently think of is that she is addressing this hesitancy, people who have been offered the jab and they can now be counted, the people who could have had it and haven't. So, question number one, why? I know some of the answers, which is why question number two today is more important than question number one. Question number one involves, and the reason why this is different from being an anti-vaxxer, the specifics of the ethnic minority question involve evidence, historical evidence of pharmaceutical companies treating people of colour like experiments. You can find a few cases, a few examples of it in America, in Africa, in Europe. It is simply a matter of historical fact, and that has created hesitancy among people of colour. Now, I think that the following point is actually a zinger. And the strongest argument for saying they are not experimenting on you before giving the drug to white people, which is a historical precedent. It has happened, all right? But on this case, it can't be happening because white people are queuing up in their millions to get vaccinated. In fact, white people are getting vaccinated at a rate of almost double, in the case of the University Hospitals of Leicester NHS Trust, black people. So, forgive me for being glib and simplistic, and I am categorically and absolutely not in any way trivialising, ignoring or seeking to dilute the severity of the historical evidence, the fact that people of colour have been used as experiments. They've been experimented upon by the medical establishments, the pharmaceutical companies historically, before the drugs or the treatments were made available to white people. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. But that can't be what's happening here. It simply can't be. So, while I completely respect that reasoning, I don't think it can be as big a player in this particular part of the story as we thought it might have been. Because the moment you say to me, I'm not having that vaccine because I know that pharmaceutical companies in the past have used people of colour as experiments before giving drugs to white people, I say, well, I'm white and I've already had it. So that's not happening here, mate. I haven't already had it, for the record. If you've got any, I'll take it, but I haven't had it. So is there a specific reason why care home staff are taking it up on such a low at such a low rate? Or is that just the latest evidence of broad hesitancy among lots of people of colour. Not all of them, or all of you, or all of us, but just lots more than is happening among white people. I'll get the phone lines open, and obviously the really important question here, and I don't think it's pompous for me to ask it, is there anything we can do to help? I mean, we as in you and me, together. Like, your mum's not had it. Maybe she thinks that Nick Ferrari is the Messiah. If I could get Nick to record a message saying, please have it, Mum. Or do you see what I mean? I'm being a bit silly, but this is quite a big platform. There are quite a lot of people listening. We do increasingly inhabit quite a big space in the media landscape. So is there anything we can do to help? Abby says, James, it's obvious that the government asked the Queen to make this COVID jab video. However, calling ethnic minorities stupid for not taking the jab yet is definitely not how to persuade them otherwise. I hope I haven't done that. I certainly didn't intend to. I don't think I have. I don't know if that's directed at me, Abby. I sense not, probably. The younger generation have seen how Harry and Meghan have been treated by this family, so I'm not sure they will be listening to anything that the Queen has to say. You might be right. I mean, in the context of care home workers, I don't know that it would be the younger generation exclusively that was in need of a little bit of help, encouragement and or guidance. So why is this going on, and why is it particularly bad in care homes? Martin is in Stamford, Connecticut in the United States. Gosh, we cast our net ever wider, Martin. What made you pick up the phone today?
Well, this is a real topic for me because I'm the head of HR for a care agency in New York State.
Good grief.
And exactly 50% of our employee population do not want to take the vaccine. Oh, wow. And the vast majority of our people at the sharp end of care delivery are African American black. But interestingly, there's a side note, our nursing staff, of which they're mostly Caucasian, they, for some reason, don't want to take the vaccine either. And I think what I've discerned here is that many of our people are not perhaps looking at sophisticated news outlets. They're probably watching Fox News over here. They're probably reading the tabloids, and I wouldn't doubt that many people are being bombarded by trolls online, telling them that the vaccine is bad for, nefarious reasons.
That would be the white nursing staff more than the people of colour, because the people of colour, are unlikely to be tuning into Fox News in their droves.
No, you're correct. So, yes, that's true. The people of colour would be trolled. But, of course, you hit the nail on the head a few moments ago, and that is that there's real evidence of black Americans being treated horrifically in medical tests in the past. And your rationale against that as being one of the reasons for people not to take the vaccine is something I'm going to take to work today, which is I actually had the vaccine on Monday, so they're not testing it on black people. They are giving it to everybody, so that's a good... Well,
that's our good deed. That's our good deed for the day. It's deeply worrying, and one's always wary of generalisations, but clearly the passage of information is relevant here. Where people are getting their information from is relevant here, and we heard a lot about churches, pastors in churches earlier when we had this conversation. But in your workforce, 50%, that's actually terrifying.
Yes. And many of our workforce are working 60, 80, even 100 hours a week because they are low paid. So if they're working those hours, they're going home, they're taking care of their families to the extent that they can, and they are going to bed. They're not watching the news, so what they're getting is anecdotal information from people who are not well informed either. So that's
chicken and egg, isn't it? So relatively low paid, relatively long hours, less time absorbing news, less time taking a diversity of news, and then, of course, more susceptible to scaremongering and propaganda, plus the historical context, plus other factors that will no doubt pop up in the course of the programme. Martin, thank you. We can't say much fairer than that. Head of HR at a care home chain. Although some of the American problems will be specific to America, and some of the UK problems will be specific to the UK. There is almost certainly a generality of hesitancy, a generality of reluctance. And then to move from care homes into hospitals, these figures, I did a genuine double take at these. 70.9% of white staff at the University Hospitals of Leicester NHS Trust have received the jab, compared with 58.5% of South Asian staff and 36.8% of black staff. Now, when you remember that the first wave saw deaths disproportionately occur in those two latter communities, you realise and it's actually got a little better in the second wave, but you realise what a potentially tragic scenario this is. Paul's in Lewisham. Paul, what would you like to say?
Good afternoon, James.
Hello.
I've got friends who work in the care home and kind of speak to them regularly. And I think the main concern is there's not a lot of information that actually has come out about what's in the vaccine. Because although people are saying this vaccine is supposed to be safe and in terms of you're going to build up antibodies and you're also going to be immunized, what is actually in the vaccine?
Why would that have a different impact upon people according to their ethnicity?
Right. The reason why I would say, because around the black community, we've also got doctors, scientists who are actually coming out and speaking out in certain forums. Now, what we've been...
You're speaking in code a bit. I don't understand. So you've got doctors that only speak to people of colour?
No.
What
but
then?
They're speaking within the community.
And they're saying what?
That us as black people, we have less, spike proteins within our body than, say, a Caucasian.
Sorry, who is saying this?
Scientists, black scientists.
Right.
And also black doctors.
Okay, but it sounds...
And they're saying this messenger RNA...
Yeah, no, but this is gibberish. Name a doctor that says this, will you?
I can't actually name
a scientist that says this, then, will you? Because at the moment it's just Paul in Lewisham.
No, right. You may say it's gibberish, but what I'm saying is this is the information that...
Well, I can't look into it if you don't tell me where it's coming from, can
right.
I?
So, but what we also need to do is get
No, I want to know who these people are. I want to know who they are, because at the moment I've only got your word that they exist.
We also need the scientists to come out and say what's actually in it and how it would...
Right, so you need people to challenge the gibberish, but I don't know how you challenge the gibberish if you can't tell me where the gibberish is coming from, you see. I'm not accusing you of acting in bad faith, but if it's a massive problem, you should have been able to direct me somewhere or to tell me of someone who is misinforming people and making ethnicity specific to the vaccine hesitancy, because that is people presumably accruing power or money or influence or simply attention by endangering the population, and that's something that I find myself wondering whether the authorities should be alerted. But I take your point. If people are being told nonsense, then that nonsense needs to be challenged, and there may be trust issues here. Claire's in Tunbridge Wells. Claire, what's going on?
Yeah, I just think as they move into younger age groups,
yes,
I think that they've sort of got that, shrug your shoulders. It's something old people get. It's no worse than flu, and not bothering. I mean, I've got an acquaintance who's working at one of the vaccination centres, and over the last couple of weeks, they're getting loads of no-shows. People are booking the vaccine, and they're just not turning up for it.
Numbers are still very strong, so that anecdotal evidence is not yet reflected in the national numbers.
No, I hope it isn't. I mean, the other thing I just wanted to say to you is that, my 93-year-old dad, he had the Pfizer one, no problems. My 90-year-old mother had the Oxford one. My 27-year-old daughter, who works on the front line, she had the Oxford one. She's fine. And I today have had the Pfizer one. And well, it was only half an hour ago, so at the moment I'm still perfectly fine.
Oh,
and
that's
I don't
exciting.
think,
No, nor do I, but you make a brilliant point, because you think back to the amazing scenes, and I don't know about you, I mentioned this yesterday, sometimes I can't believe it was so recently, it feels like a lifetime ago, when people were hurling themselves off Durdle Door in Dorset, and the beaches were absolutely rammed, even as our death rate was climbing close to becoming, as it subsequently has, the highest in the world, countries with a population of over 20 million. And it was almost as if young people thought that they were immortal and that coronavirus, and sadly there were people in this industry telling them that it's only going to affect the old people, it's only going to affect the vulnerable, everyone else can carry on as normal. And that might translate into vaccine attitudes as well.
I think it does, and I also think even that sort of 45s, 50s, early 60s age group.
I honestly don't know. I'll just find out.
Yeah,
well, scale of 1 to 10. I've got colleagues who are young. Scale of 1 to 10, what's your vaccine enthusiasm? If you could take it now, 10 out of 10. Yeah, you're not really that young, though, Keith. And I'm 10 out of 10 as well. I don't know. I mean, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? If people thought that they could go to the beach or start licking each other's faces in McDonald's, then because they'd be immune, they'd somehow not get it, but their grandma might. And then we had to explain to them that if you get it, you're going to give it to your grandma. But that could be it. That's age. That's age range, though. Why are care home workers at such a low figure?
I don't know. I don't understand at all. But I think there's a lot of people out there that don't trust any government, and they just think, they don't know what they're talking about, and they're a bit obviously the older generation was brought up to trust doctors, plus the fact if they're very, very old and in care homes, or like my parents, with a whole range of other things wrong with them.
Yeah.
They used to just taking what the doctor tells them to take without really questioning it.
Yeah.
Whereas that sort of middle-aged group seem to, I don't know.
A little bit more Facebook. Yeah, get your Auntie Doris's Facebook page, or to go back to Paul and Lewisham, these mysterious doctors and scientists claiming that it might have some sort of deleterious effect upon people of certain ethnicities. I genuinely don't know. There's an amazing tweet from it's tragic and deeply poignant from the comedian, the rather brilliant comedian Paul Chowdhury, who has lost his mum, and it's oh mate, I'm so sorry. I shall share that with you after the news headlines, because it's both pertinent and powerful. You are, thank you, Claire, listening to James O'Brien on LBC. If you're struggling to get through, don't text me. Just wait until I do something like this. Thank you, Claire. Bye-bye. I've seen a couple of these, and it's one of those moments where you have to guard against biting people's heads off, because it's frustration born of love and concern. But it's also deeply disturbing. So Andy's been in touch to say, in my daughter's case, she is a care home worker, many of her colleagues are not happy to take the vaccination as they are concerned about how it might affect fertility and or pregnancy. Now, why is that message landing more in some communities, for want of a better word, sections of society, than it is in others? So the official guidance is that because it's brand new science, that they haven't done enough testing to confidently assert that all pregnant people should take it. But I've seen nothing in my orbit referencing fertility. So is that part of the reason? Is that message, that false message, or that unfounded message, that ill-informed message, albeit well-meaning, presumably, is that landing more among care home workers than it is among other professions? Is it landing more among ethnic minorities than it is among other people? I just don't know, but I want to try to help. Jeff's in Croydon. Jeff, what do you reckon is going on here?
James, nice to speak to you.
Likewise.
I always listen to your show.
Thank you, Jeff.
Glad for this opportunity. What I was going to say is, as with any message, we just need to be persistent. And I think on behalf of, well, not on behalf, but I think from the perspective of, is it Public Health England?
Yeah.
I would think that what they need to do is that, regardless of the initial slow take-up, that they just need to be persistent in pursuing, the message of, how important it is to have the vaccine.
Yes.
And my point would be is that, with...
Well, you're putting the cart before the horse. Why do you think the hesitancy is so pronounced in certain sections of society?
Okay, well, firstly, I'm going to be very careful about saying it's that there's any discrepancy within any particular community or peoples, as you correctly said, should I say? And the reason I say that is because if you look just across the waters at America, we had a president leading a country who was telling people, not to wear masks.
Yes.
How it was a hoax, and that wasn't a black community.
No, that was the orange community with a population of one.
Orange community. Yeah,
but this number's here, mate. I don't think I'm doing anything irresponsible. Look, if we just look at the NHS Trust in Leicester, 71% of white staff have had the jab, 58.5% of South Asian staff, and 36.8% of black staff. That is not a misrepresentation or a dangerous generalisation. It's terrifying.
It's questionable. And again,
it's not questionable. It's counting, as I like to say.
It's counting, but the reason why I say it's questionable is that you've quoted statistics of 70, 56, 36.
Yeah.
But bear in mind that one of the conversations we've been having over the year is that a large proportion of care workers are black people.
Yes.
In fact, a disproportionate amount.
Yes.
So your 36% may actually equate to more than 70% in terms of the white people. So, without those...
No, this is all doctors and nurses, though.
Say again, sorry?
This is doctors and nurses. This isn't in care homes.
So
this is all NHS
there's a clear
workers.
discrepancy between care homes and...
No, but a percentage guards against the discrepancy you describe. We're getting a bit bogged down here. So you're, I think, challenging the idea that there is a problem.
I think to look at it, I don't want to bog you down, but what I would say is the caution is that we've gone from black people having a hesitancy, and now we've got a more compartmentalised about black people within care homes.
Actually, I haven't mentioned the ethnicity within the care home, except to suggest that it's probably the same problem, which would be explained by the overrepresentation.
Yeah, because you've just mentioned those figures of 70, 56 and 36.
But no, again, mate, they're not in care homes. That's at the University Hospitals of Leicester NHS Trust. That's all NHS staff.
Right.
And lower proportions of black and Asian staff. So the thing, I mean, it sounds like I'm patronising. I promise you I'm not.
No, not at all. I'm not very easy to be patronising.
Nor am I, actually. So we're in good company. So but the point is, it's a percentage. So for every 100 people who are white, 71 of them are getting jabbed. For every 100 people who are black, 37 of them are getting jabbed. That's almost half. That's just counting. That's the problem.
I know, but James, again, we have to be careful, because if you're talking within a specific area of profession... Hello?
No, I'm listening to you.
Yeah, if we're talking about a specific area of profession, so 100 white people, and 17% are getting, bear in mind they're going to be 400. If there's 100 white people working in the NHS, there's going to be 400 black people.
No, but it's percentages.
Is that not what we're saying?
No.
That there are more black people within the NHS?
No, that's completely irrelevant, because it's percentages. It's for every 100 people. If they're white, 71 of them have been jabbed. If they're black, 37 of them have been jabbed.
Okay.
For every 100...
I don't want to get bogged down in this. But
I'm going to move on, because we are bogged down, and it's not your fault, but we're trying to work out how we can help, and I don't think it's very helpful to start questioning the validity of the description of the problem. That's why percentages are so much more reliable than other measures. Mass is in Exeter. Mass, what would you like to say?
Hey, James. I think there's a point to be made around the religious side to this. So with people working in care homes, you're saying that there's less of uptake for people with black and ethnic minority backgrounds. From what I've seen from people who I know from a Muslim background, there's a lot of information or misinformation being put about via Facebook and other places against the vaccine for reasons that it's not halal or it's not accepted by religious leaders. Or
have you come across that yourself?
Yeah. So I've got family who are Muslim, and they routinely share a lot of information on their pages that are saying that there's potential effects against fertility. And to which authority do they appeal on that? Because that's a job for imams, isn't it? That's that you need to get Muslim leaders out into the community saying, no, this is nonsense, deal with this. But where is this authority? Because Paul in Lewisham made similar points, but not specific to Muslims. But I don't know who these people are that are claiming to be fertility experts or vaccine experts. Well, yeah, exactly. So there's no...
It's your Auntie Doris's Facebook page, or you know...
Exactly, yeah. So these Facebook pages will be set up by a local Muslim group or set up around a mosque, going to be a community-focused group.
Right.
But then people will be putting out information saying, I've heard from my...
Yes, so it's Auntie. So we've done a lot on Auntie Doris's Facebook page about that. Yeah. This is your Auntie Fatima's Facebook page, effectively.
But this is coming not directly from that, because it's being circulated via a actual group or a page, like a community page. It has a bit more impact or strike with it, because people think, okay, well, it's been published from there.
It has false credibility, but anyone can stick anything they want on those pages if they're not being properly administered and properly scrutinised.
Exactly.
Okay. And so that would be... So have you seen specifically the halal claim?
Well, I've seen the halal claim, and it's like the misinformation. So when COVID first came out, there was a lot of disbelief in it actually being of any risk. So the initial conversation was, well, it's like the flu. So it was...
now, that's not unique to communities or
but
people.
Then you've got this build-up of these arguments saying, so you've got the underlying tone of it's not as dangerous as people thought.
Yeah.
That's what we thought.
Yeah.
And then you have these additional layers on top saying, well,
all fall. It feeds, doesn't it?
Someone in my peer group, who I have respect for from their religious side, thinks there's an issue around potential impact on fertility or around whatever it may be. And then it just builds up. So each individual argument on its own isn't very strong. But you've got...
It's a wall of noise.
Yeah, and the wall of noise, because those arguments build up and they're layers, then people say, OK, well, I just don't trust it.
So the phenomenon is the same as it is among vaccine skeptics of any hue or creed or colour. The fundamental phenomenon is the same, but there are different flavours of it. And perhaps, because of what you describe, perhaps some of these easily nippable buds are not being nipped because it's not mainstream or it's not majoritarian. That's really interesting. So that, for example, if you're going to bring halal into it, that's something that really can only be addressed by Muslim leaders. And of course, Muslim medics, possibly more powerfully than Muslim clerics. Thank you, Nas. Crikey, there is something quite big going on here, and that, I think, increasingly must be why the Queen has weighed in. I'm going to read you this now from Paul Chowdhury, who is a brilliant entertainer, but this is far from funny. He's lost his mum, I'll tell you that now, so that you understand the full weight of his public post. My mum being able to light up a room is an understatement, and she was much funnier than me. A former headmistress in Bombay, a holder of a master's in both English and in music and sitar, a natural genius chef, a feminist, an incredible mother, wife, daughter, sibling, to name just a few. My family are not anti-vaxxers, neither are most people I know from the BAME community. In fact, I know more non-Asian anti-vaxxers, and we are all seen as BAME. We are not. We are different ethnicities and religions. We are mothers, daughters, husbands, brothers, sons, and much more than this catch-all label. My mum was turned down for the vaccine when she asked, despite being in what the government classed as a high-risk group, as well as caring for my elderly father during his radiation treatment. Tragically for her and us, she was unnecessarily refused. And now my family and I mourn the loss of our Queen. Now, the perfect media spin has been, well, the more susceptible BAME group aren't taking up the vaccine, brackets, so it's their own fault, ... brackets. Asians make up 5% of the UK's population. Even if half of them were unsure about the vaccine, it's minuscule in comparison to the white 87% of the UK, of whom 20% are unsure of the vaccine, according to the Royal Society for Public Health. This makes the number of vaccine-sceptical white people almost 7 times higher than that of the Asian community. And yet the media seem more concerned by Asian anti-vaxxers than taking real action to reduce the death toll among the Asian community. However, the government's media twist gives them an excuse to knowingly neglect the most vulnerable groups. Why weren't the disproportionately affected also proportionately helped? Plenty of BAME entertainers are blindly assisting the government with their cover-up. However, I believe this is yet another example of systemically racist propaganda, and that our government is fully responsible for not preventing this preventable massacre. They said under 20,000 deaths would be a good result. Well, we're well over 122,000 now and counting. I call on the Health Secretary today to ensure that every carer or person who is at risk is prioritised and can ask for and receive the vaccine now rather than wait their turn. I'll see you again soon, Mum, but I'll speak the truth on the way there. And as I told you, that's an incredibly powerful posting from Paul Chowdhury. I mean, I'm not qualified to comment on all of it. I don't know that I agree with all of it, but that may well be because I'm not qualified to comment on all of it. The bottom line is, though, that proportionately speaking, in percentage terms, these problems are overrepresented. His point, which I think an earlier caller was trying to make, but in the wrong place, because it's got nothing to do with specific NHS vaccine take-up rates among different people of different ethnicities, but in the broader population, the numbers, well, look, it's like if you've got 100 people and 5% of them do something, that's 5 people. If you've got 1 million people and 1% of them do something, that's a hell of a lot more than 5. And yet on paper, the problem is bigger among the 100-person community because 5% of them are doing something than it is among the 1 million population community, because only 1% of them are doing it. But the number doing it is I'm pretty sure that is the point our earlier caller was trying to make, but just in the wrong place. 12:51 is the time. I sense from some of the early reports on social media that Alex Salmond is pulling no punches as he gives evidence to the Holyrood inquiry into the government's mishandling of harassment claims against him. I'll give you a little flavour, and then no doubt Sheila Fogarty will be giving you more detail as and when it emerges. But here is a little flavour of the early content of his testimony.
I watched in astonishment on Wednesday when the First Minister of Scotland, used a COVID press conference to effectively question the result of a jury. Still, I said nothing. Well, today, that changes.
Watch this space. The repetition there was him. It wasn't Keith's fault. He wasn't pressing the wrong buttons or anything like that. He said those little phrases twice. Back to this worrying, and look, I'll read you this as well, because this keeps coming up. And listen, the plural of anecdote is not data. I do know that, but I also have been doing this job long enough to know when it seems like there's something in the wind from you getting in touch with me. This is from Pembrokeshire. James, as someone from Pembrokeshire, a county that's 98% white, I did not know that. It was on Pointless last night as well, the castle. I can tell you that vaccine scepticism in care homes is not exclusive to ethnic minority groups. My partner's sister is a carer and chose not to have the vaccine because a colleague refused it. It was like a domino effect. It only took one care worker out of 30 to read something on Facebook about fertility, and before you know it, the majority of the staff had refused it. There's something to be said for fitting in here too. I can't help but feel that had she got the vaccine, she might have been stared at as different. These sort of jobs are quite familial and close-knit, and you really don't want to be the odd one out. And unfortunately, the odd ones out have become those who have received the vaccine. As I say, I've got absolutely no reason to doubt anyone who gets in touch with me, Alex included. I can't obviously prove or disprove the validity of any contribution to the programme, but it would be an odd thing to make up, wouldn't it? And I can tell you that it is quite common, this fertility. So we need to get to the bottom of where that's coming from, don't we? Familiar, sorry, I had got to the end of it. I didn't realise that I had. The odd ones out have become those who receive the vaccine. So that's got nothing to do with ethnicity and everything to do with workplace identity, politics, gossip even. And a care home, as Alex tells it, would be a particularly febrile environment for this sort of misinformation to become effectively contagious. Heather is in Croydon. Heather, what made you pick up the phone?
I know you've been talking about this. Good day, James. I know you've been talking about this for a while.
Yes.
I think the problem is about a lack of inclusion, fair and trust. Can I start off by saying that I'm from a BAME community, or Black British Caribbean community. I actually had the vaccine today. Most of my friends and relatives who are from the same community are going to have the vaccine. So I do think there is an issue about how widespread is this an issue around ethnicity, but I won't go there. I don't want to. Well,
you've already gone there. You absolute outrage coming in. I'm not doing that. I don't want to talk about this thing I've just talked about. Now, please let me talk about something else, because it is an issue. But obviously, as a white bloke, two people of colour now have kind of tried to persuade me that it's not as big an issue as I think it is, and I that's not a battle that I want to get into. But the numbers. Yeah. Let me just read you these again. All right, this is Leicester's hospitals. White staff, 71% have had it. South Asian staff, 58.5%. Black staff, just shy of 37%. That's a big deal, mate. It's just a big deal.
Absolutely. Right. And I do know, I was going to go on to say, I do know people from BAME communities who don't want to have the vaccine. So I'm not...
And what we need to keep reminding, and this is the point that I missed perhaps at the beginning, is that there are loads and loads and loads of people in all communities who are... I mean, I think the white problem is actually anti-vaxxers and genuine scepticism, whereas this is more misinformation and hesitancy, perhaps.
Well, I was going to come on to that because I've been talking to my friends about this, about why there might be an issue in BAME communities. And we've come to the view that this is about two things, because it's about how we make decisions as individuals.
Okay.
And we make decisions based on our head, so information that we get, data, but we also do it with our heart, emotion. And anybody who says they don't make decisions like that, is lying. We do use a combination of heart and head. And I think for some, my feeling is that for a lot of us in the BAME community who've experienced, and I'm not going to go down the scientific childhood, I'm actually talking about how we feel as being part of this society.
Okay, no,
we
I
often
buy that.
feel excluded.
Yeah.
There is an absolute lack of trust in government, and I would say particularly this government.
Yeah.
So when you bring that together...
Bring Windrush into it as well, as evidence of the grounds for your mistrust?
The last time I spoke to you was about Windrush, and I actually had that written down.
Yeah.
So I think when you bring in the misinformation that's been provided by certain people on Facebook or wherever to certain communities, and then you tie that in with a feeling of lack of inclusion, a fear, a lack of trust, what you actually have is people who are really, really actually deep down quite anxious and fearful.
So
because
why does my point, and we're going to run out of time, so my apologies to Mark in Clapham who was supposed to be up next and to everybody else waiting, but why does my point not cut more mustard or butter more parsnips when I simply say, hang on, what white people are taking it in their droves, so there's clearly nothing to worry about in the context of people of colour being experimented upon or targeted unduly. Why does that not work better as an argument?
I think the message has got to be we're all part of this community, this society. Everybody is valued, regardless of your skin colour, your age, your ethnicity. Everybody's making a contribution. You matter, and that's why we want you to take the vaccine.
And that's what the Queen was doing. That's what the Queen was doing, Heather.
Exactly.
My goodness me, you've just brought us in, bang on time, and by bringing back round to... You are my Queen, Heather.
Thank you, James.
On this
we need to hear more of that. We need to hear more encouragement.
That's it. You've just done... I love it when that happens. That's exactly what the Queen was doing. She wasn't breaking it down. She was talking about all looking after each other. Heather, my Queen.